No, what is it? It's 18 minutes to 8 o'clock, and as always at this time on a Sunday morning, let's turn to what some of the religious papers have been saying. I'm delighted that Jackie is with us. Jackie Luke's looking through the papers for us, Secretary of the Hull and East Riding Interfaith. How are you?
I'm fine,
Nice to see you again. What have you been reading about?
Well, the first story is about the Archbishop of Canterbury's comments last weekend to BBC local radio West Midlands on the forthcoming white paper announcement by Ian Duncan Smith. And the announcement was on Tuesday, so he was giving his views before the details came out.
That's right.
Perhaps in response to media reporting. Anyway, there's a report in the Church of England newspaper which quotes the Archbishop in detail, saying that, and the Archbishop, to quote him, said, benefit claimers should not be labelled as wicked, stupid or lazy. Their status is down to circumstances. It's not their fault. They failed to break through into something and to drive that spiral deeper. And as I say, this seems a great problem, unquote. So there was plenty of support for the Archbishop's anxiety. He called it anxiety. Very anxious, he said, about government proposals to reform welfare benefits. At various churches, the Baptist Union, Methodist Church and Church of Scotland issued a statement also supporting him. But it's interesting that not everybody agreed. And of course, the Labour opposition on the Tuesday supported the changes in principle, and they only said where are the jobs going to come from, because they were going to do the same thing. Anyway, it's interesting that the Church of England newspaper reports Martin Patterson in Leeds, St George's Crypt there, which helps the homeless, saying that the government is on the right track with these cuts and reforms. We think there is much to gain from exploring this avenue, he says.
Gosh.
And then he goes into detail about helping people out of this, and the same with some Christian Credit Union people. And on the same subject, because there's a fair amount of discussion of this, Paul Donovan in the Catholic Universe has a very good article about housing benefit, which the Archbishop had also been anxious about. Paul Donovan says that this is really a London problem, big cities and mostly London, that 13% of the country, our country's population is in London, but nearly 40% of housing benefit is paid there. You know, a cap on rents of £400 a week. And Boris Johnson, the London mayor, had said, quote, we will not accept any sort of Kosovo-style social cleansing of London, unquote, because they don't want to lose the cleaners and nannies and so on.
No, that's right.
Poor people living near them, and fear that they'll move to London suburbs. But I think, this is my little thought, that they might move to the north, as the Kosovo people did, because we have the housing, so no bad thing.
We have the space, that's right, absolutely.
Empty housing. Next.
What else? Yes.
More on the what we could call the cuts or the changes. The Methodist Recorder has an article worrying about Ministry of Defence chaplaincies being cut. And also that Methodist Recorder has a big thing in favour of the poppy, symbolism, wonderfulness of it. But the Baptist Times, I'm interested to see, has a big article against wearing a poppy by a Reverend Hackley in Bath, who says it's become sort of downgraded, and that people just have a box of them, politicians and media presenters, and they put one on their, it doesn't mean anything. It's done far too soon, so it's like Christmas is coming or poppy wearing is coming.
Well, there was criticism of the BBC, wasn't there? Because suddenly all the presenters arrived about a month ago.
Yes.
Suddenly they were all wearing poppies.
Yes, and he's saying that he believes in the freedom not to, that he believes in peace and so on. So it's a very interesting point.
I would argue that there are an awful lot more people in this world that are not media people than there are media people. And they would, there are an awful lot more people.
I think the British Legion deplored it being too soon and said,
I think you're right.
Want it as something that people give charity
but in terms
to, and
of
not reuse one from last year to be wearing ones.
No, but I think, the members of the public who... there are many more members of the public than there are people in the media who are perhaps told to wear them when they're on screen. Do you see what I mean? So the freedom to choose is still there. I would suggest, but that's my own personal opinion.
You're wearing one.
I'm wearing one. I'm wearing it with pride, and I wasn't told to wear one.
No.
Yeah, and I wasn't told to wear one, but I'm wearing one. I'm very proud to wear one as well. Absolutely. One more from you.
Oh, one more. Do you want
Yeah.
a joke?
Go on then, yes. Go on, let's have a joke.
Well, I mean, there are
Is it
several more...
clean?
Well, sort of.
Oh, that's all right.
Several more stories I was going to mention, but is there only time for the joke?
There's only time for the joke.
Okay.
All right.
The Catholic Herald... here we are. Reports a debate about on the motion for and against stop bashing Christians. Britain is becoming an anti-Christian country. That was the thing that they were debating, and there were 3 for and 3 against, and beforehand a vote was taken. About 500 people at this, it seems to be a church that it was held, and they were against the motion. No, sorry, they were for the motion, stop bashing Christians, but after the debate they'd been won over and they were against it. But the joke is that one of the people wanting to bash Christians was Matthew Paris, the Times columnist, journalist, and one against him was Howard Jacobson, who's just won some prize for writing a novel, I think.
Right.
A writer, anyway. And Jacobson said, I'm quoting the Catholic Herald now, he argued that in bashing Christianity we were bashing all that's finest in our culture, and for reasons not quite clear, he told the story of how Matthew Paris had once bravely jumped into the Thames to save a drowning dog. Matthew Paris's response was uncharacteristically pious. He said he'd done it because, unlike Jews and Christians, he believed dogs have souls. And then the Catholic Herald man puts in brackets, Catholics do believe dogs have souls, but not immortal ones. Anyway, Howard Jacobson, in turn, responded by asking the best question of the night: would Matthew Paris have let the dog drown if it didn't have a soul?
There's a good one to end with.
Yeah.
Very good. Listen, Jackie, lovely to see you. Thank you very much. Have a great day, and nice to see you. Jackie Luke's looking through the papers for us this morning and helping us pause for thought. Well, a message recorded a couple of days ago for us from another Tim Stevenson, the Secretary of the Hull and East Riding Humanist Group.
Good morning. Remember the 5th of November. I'm sure that most of you heard or saw some fireworks on Friday night. Guy Fawkes Night, or Bonfire Night, is of course the annual celebration to mark the failure of the gunpowder plot on the 5th of November 1605, when Guy Fawkes and his co-conspirators attempted to blow up the Houses of Parliament. The gunpowder plot was an example of religiously inspired terrorism, something that has made an unwelcome return to these shores in the 21st century. The conspirators were Roman Catholics, and their plan was to assassinate King James I and restore Catholicism to England. Until 1859, it was compulsory to celebrate the deliverance of the King on the 5th of November as a result of the Act of Parliament called the Thanksgiving Act. Prolonged war and bloodshed as a direct result of religious disagreements was a constant feature of life in the 17th century. The 30 Years' War between 1618 and 1648 was one of the most destructive conflicts in European history, not to mention the English Civil Wars. Thanks to the Enlightenment and the rise of secularism in the 18th century, religious conflict has declined significantly. The conflict between Protestants and Catholics has continued into modern times in places like Northern Ireland, where traditional religion has remained a potent force. Religiously inspired violence in places such as India and Somalia is even worse. Today, our society faces new threats from those bent on usurping our hard-fought secular traditions, for example by advocating the introduction of religious laws such as the Sharia, which would inevitably come to rival the one secular law we all live under at present. Bonfire Night remains a perennial reminder that we should never again allow the explosive mix of religion and politics to dominate our society. To do so is playing with fire.
Tim, thank you. Tim Stevenson helping us pause for thought.